Okay, well, I'm going to talk a lot about branding and business and your product. So let's get started because we got a lot to cover. I'm going to start off with why I'm here. I actually am a firm believer in learn, earn, and return. You should always give back after you've gone through your own education experience around life and share your wisdom. What I'm going to be showing you are not just ideas, but actually evidence-based proven solutions. So what I want you to do is to listen and to take away value. That's why I'm here, is for you to take away value. And I want you to be inspired to think bigger. You know, a lot of you, how many here are inventors? Great, should be most all of you. How many here have a business? Okay, great. So that's quite a big number as well. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about here again products and services, but I want you to think bigger than your business. I want to have you think bigger than your invention itself. So what we do is that we design business and products that are worth more to all stakeholders, all shareholders. So it creates more value for licensee situations, create more value for CEO, managers, and could inspire cultures and societies. So your ideas can actually make a contribution. This is either here again, I consider myself to be an inventor as well, helping out when Steve Jobs came back in after he got fired and he came back in around 95, helping out with the G3 generation of computers, and then working with Philips, introducing DVDs to take over VHS and Beta. Remember when Betas and VHS were around? So I helped them out formulating that and helped out MGM create the interface that we use for Blu-rays and DVDs, what's called a GUI. And several other projects here as well, just giving you a little bit of feedback, or background I should say. And what I've done is I create solutions that work for all size companies. So it's not just Fortune 500s, but it's also for startups, or people with just an idea, or people with just an invention that don't know how to take it to market. So for example, here is a company called Piano Wizard, Music Wizard, and they create a program, a software, a game that teaches kids how to play the piano within minutes. Like you can play Beethoven in minutes because it's based on visual aids to learn how to play the piano. And the gentleman just had a concept and didn't know how to take it to the market, so we helped him develop everything from the GUI interface to the business model, and then creating all the packaging, get it on the shelf. So we had basically an evaluation just in 5 years of $43 million. So here again, just taking something from scratch and building it into something that's actually created as a brand. So this has actually influenced working with influence the market of billions of dollars in profits, brand value, and equity for our clients. Just to give you just a general idea of the model that we've created, and this is going to be basing things off these models I'm going to show you, is actually going to divulge you some of our intellectual property so you could take parts of it and use it for yourself, okay? Not to reuse it for others, but to use it for yourself. So we've come up with a 3-step process where it's first looking at strategy, and then execution, and then looking at management. And then I'll be explaining all this. Like a strategy session, what you get into is you start to look at what do you have as an idea and how you can make it into a very strong concept, and then how can you protect it intellectually, like patents and trademarks, even trade secrets, which become very, very valuable over time, that actually supports what it is to ultimately create a brand, okay? And then this just shows you all the different medias. We work with everything from product development to packaging to actually doing vehicle design, storefronts, everything that has to do with what are called engagement points. So we create a system that actually integrates everything, and I'm going to show you how this works so you could actually look at it and apply it to your business. That's why I'm here, so you could take away and look at your own business and product, okay? So the idea is, from the standpoint, is creating success. And I always start off, well, how do you define success? So actually interviewing literally thousands of different entrepreneurs over the several years, of course, people that are in business, they want higher profits. Or people like probably perhaps here, they want a license agreement, perhaps. How many here want a license agreement? Okay, or here for that specifically, okay? How many want to bring a product all the way into the market, into the consumer's hand? Okay, great, okay? How many want to be recognized as an industry leader? Okay, great. All your hands should be up. Okay, and then how many people want to actually after committing and doing all this hard work, you want to spend more time with your loved ones? Okay, good. And then how many people want to really make a difference for humanity with your product, with your idea? Great. You're sitting in the right chairs. So that's what we're about. We're really about looking at the big picture. How do you get it where besides making a profit, you're looking beyond the profitability? What is it that you could actually do to actually contribute to humanity and make a shift and a change with your idea, with your product, with your business, with your brand? So I have to start off too by saying, why do business and brands fail? Okay. Well, a lot of times because you're thinking of your idea, of your product just as a product. You're not looking at it as a brand. For an example would be like you're just looking at it as a commodity. When you're looking at it just as a commodity, then you have to get and be beaten up around pricing. But let's just say, how would you evaluate, or what would you prefer? If I gave you a choice to drive and own 2 cars for free, what would you choose? A Ford Pinto or a Rolls Royce? Okay, Rolls Royce, right? Okay, unless you like the classics, right? So the point is that maybe all of you have driven both cars, maybe half of you driven one or the other, maybe some of you have never driven either. You already have an image of the value behind both those cars. That is one of the epitomes of a brand. It's in the mind of the consumer and you can't do anything about it. But you could influence them. Did you get that? That's really important that you get that. So and I'm going to show you how you could influence a licensor, or let's say marketing, or let's say the consumer, or let's say strategic partnerships. How do you influence so you can create more value behind your product so it's worth more, so you could actually end up making more money and create more profit centers, okay? Misuse of funds is a big one. A lot of people don't know there's an actual way to allocate your money towards building and developing your idea and then actually marketing it, and how much money is really needed to market a new idea or even build your business to a new level. Okay, I'm going to be talking about that as well. Or you create the wrong sequence. You go, okay, I want to market my idea, but you haven't even figured out your positioning first. Your positioning of your product, how is it going to stack up against the competition? A lot of companies go, I just want to use social media. I want to get this on a website. And then tell you right now, you're going to be starting and stopping and starting and stopping, and it's going to cost you a lot of money and time by doing from the process of tactical first without strategy first, okay? Lack of a competent team might be that great, which I'm a firm believer, you hire your friends and family, right? Well, what about the experts around you to really move it, that they have the experience to move it out in the market much quicker, more efficiently, and a lot more effectively as well? And a lot of times it might be you, the actual person who's the creator, because you're holding it on to it like a baby and you're not letting go of it. In fact, I just read through Entrepreneur Magazine, they actually describe that as being the number one reasons why a product never makes it to the market. Because the inventor is holding it too closely to the chest and is not listening to professionals of what's really needed to get it out to the market, so it actually becomes much more lucrative. Does that make sense? Okay, so I didn't talk about quite a bit here around all these different subjects. Okay, so why I'm here is to empower you. I'm going to take you and give you experience that I've accumulated over the last 17 years now of working with all size companies, from people sitting like you in the seat to the Fortune 100 companies. So one of the biggest problems, and I'm showing this image here, is here's your idea. Let's say it's this shape. Okay, so let's say your business or your product is this shape, this color here, right? And the way you're getting out there, let's say that this is your website, this is the name of your company, this is your brochure, this is the product itself, is that there's nothing that's uniform. Everything's telling you a different story. Okay, the fonts don't match, the colors don't match, everything, what I call the Sybil effect. What's happening is that your positioning may not be right to begin with, but then again, you're actually saying, this is who I am in about 15 different ways or more, okay? Even how you present to, let's say, an investor, you're telling a different story, or a salesperson is telling a different story than the next salesperson. So this is one of the biggest hindrances I see with all size companies. I'm not just talking about entrepreneurs or small companies. I'm also talking about the big boys, is where they lost track of who they are, okay? This shows you a diagram of what we found out the simplest way to build something very quickly, most effectively, and most efficiently with the highest profitability and the best economics. So the first is to figure out, well, what's your core position? I'm going to go through this with a lot of detail, what I mean by core positioning. In other words, what makes you unique, what makes you different, and why should the consumer purchase your product or understand why they would choose your business over another, okay? How are you positioned uniquely out there? Like, kind of like an example would be like Allstate, the Mahan guy, how you could relate to the Mahan guy, perhaps versus like, you know, Geico with the gecko lizard, okay? They're coming from two different positioning, but you're relating to them in two different ways. Does that make sense? That's actually called the brand personality, okay? I gave you 100 examples, but as long as you get that idea, that's what I want to drive. This is the second thing, is having, once you figure out your positioning, is having it where everything is relatable and everything is now integratable, speaking one story, your story, in a consistent voice. Meaning a copy is written in a particular way. It's written where it flows from the website to the brochure to your packaging to the point of purchase. The colors are consistent. The fonts are consistent. What happens is that you have control over these two images. Remember I gave you the example of Ford Pinto and Rolls-Royce? You have the influence of how you want people to respond to your product when you do it strategically, or your business. What you don't have control over is what sits in the image of the consumer's mind. And that's where it matters the most. Most companies look from the inside out without really looking from the outside in. Does that make sense? Because you're busy doing what you're doing, which is great. You're the visionaries, okay? You're the inventors. But you're looking from the inside out without understanding what the consumers, how they're going to respond. And that's what's going to actually make it valuable and actually create a profit for you, okay? What I feel where companies are heading, and the strongest companies are evident of this, like Apple and Virgin and so forth and so on, is when they take a whole brain approach. Most companies will usually lean on one side or the other. They usually lean on the left-hand side, which has to do with profit, structure, the business, the mechanics, the operations, the systems. Super critical, really important. Okay? And then the right side, that has to do with emotional intellect. It has to do with how the consumer is going to respond and engage with your product and with your service. Okay? That has to do with the aesthetics, the look and the feel, the creativity, the emotions behind it. Now, the best products, the best businesses I've seen out there is when they incorporate both. If you look at Apple, that's in my belief system, and actually knowing this, that Apple, why they pulled far ahead, is because they want to have something that looked beautiful, and there was a consistency from their iPad, the iPhone, the MacBook, the Mac Pro. There's a certain look and feel that integrates all the pieces together. You can identify a Mac product just by its look, even though you don't even have to look at the logo or the brand mark, right? That's power. That's real power, okay? So I'm going to break this up. What we've done is we create a unique, vertically integrated system. I'm going to start off with phase one, which is strategy. What happens in strategy, okay? There's phase two is implementation. Okay, how do you implement, how do you execute from your idea? And then phase three is in management. How do you manage your company? How do you manage your product? How do you manage, let's say, your product and create an extension line? How do you manage all that for growth? So then that way, you actually, here again, create more revenue streams for yourselves. So the first one is strategy. When we get into strategy, you can't leave your business or product to chance. Meaning that a lot of people work from the hip, and they go, okay, I want to move from here, point A to point B, but they don't even know why they're moving to point A to point B, or don't even have the clarity of the sequence of why they need to move to point A to point B. How many people can relate to that? Okay? So don't leave it to chance. Okay? So hope is not a strategy. So just hoping you'll get somewhere is not a strategy. Okay? That's why you're here. This is great. You're here to learn. Think of it this way. A strategy outlines a map. It's like, it's kind of like another way of putting it is strategy is your GPS. It gets you to your destination. Okay? And the great thing is that a map can lead to treasures, right? Okay? So a GPS can lead you to your final destination. So how does this work? Okay, so in strategy, at least the way that we look at strategies, you should be looking at 3 areas. Whether this even applies if you want to create a product to be licensed, because when you look at creating a product to be licensed, the more value you put behind your idea and the more marketable it is, guess what? The more that you're going to have advantage over negotiation. Does that make sense? So this is not just for product. This is looking at your business, looking at your product as a business, and then looking at a business creating into a successful brand. So the first is the business strategy. The second is looking at the consumer. Most people call it market. I look at it calling it a customer strategy. And the third is looking at the brand strategy. And I'm going to get into what do these all mean. What do these 3 domains mean? Now the great thing is that when you integrate all 3 together, you save a lot of time, a lot of money, and you get there quicker. Most companies, most people look at them like, oh, let's look at the business first, looks at the market in second, let's look at the brand third. It doesn't work that way. If you look at Apple, you look at any successful companies, you look at almost really the brand first, because a brand, here again, is what kind of experience do you want to leave with the customer. If you understand the psychological reasons, the emotional reasons, the social reasons, you will be a lot more successful with your product and your business. Okay, so with brand strategy, it's really looking at the right-hand side of the brain. It's looking at, well, what difference are you going to make with your product? What's the bigger context? Okay, so if you have this widget, great, it solved this problem. But going beyond solving a problem, how does this actually change society? Okay, like do you not think that the iPhone changed society, and the iPod, and the iPad, all those things have actually changed society? They definitely have, okay? So think of it that way. That's why I'm saying think bigger, think bigger. Think of what kind of big giant container you're going to create. When you think bigger, you could actually strategize things a lot further with your ideas. Your philosophy is really important. Your story you stand for. Everybody here can move away from having a product be a product and move into a brand by just understanding what's the philosophy. Why are we doing what we're doing? What makes our product different and unique? What's the story? How did I come about this idea? Okay, what changes did I want to see with my idea? This is really important because when large companies look at you, they want to look at your philosophy. And if you speak your philosophy further, I guarantee it, you're going to look like a much heavier weight player and actually have a better opportunity for negotiation. I'm giving you some secrets here of how it works out there, okay? Let's say with Toys R Us or Mattel or working with Target, Costco. We work with all those companies. We understand what they're looking for. When you speak their language, they get excited because now they see that now you're playing in their league. Does that make sense? Okay. So values. Principles that you stand for. Values are so incredible because that shapes your culture. A lot of people go, oh, I want to get this investor, I want to get this license deal. Well, how do you know if that person or that company has the same values? If they don't, they could actually diminish the value of your brand, of your product, more so than all the time you use to create it, okay? The promise, the core promise, like a core promise would be like absolutely positively guaranteed overnight. That's FedEx. Or Avis, we try harder, okay? Because they knew Hertz was number 1 at the time. That tagline, by the way, brought them to number 1 position, okay? The differentiation, like unique personalities, like I was talking about, like Mahan for Allstate, that's a brand personality. What kind of personality are you going to create behind your product as a brand? And that's really important because then you could actually relate quickly to people. Think of your product or your business, it's like an entity. It has a soul, it has a personality, it has a look. How are you going to have it engage? How are you going to have it look and engage with others? Okay, business strategy is understanding why you're in business. It has to be more than just, oh, I just want to get this sold, I just want to get this license. When you look at, oh, I'm in this business because this problem, it would solve the problem of saving lives. You see how that shifts then an idea, just an idea, to something that's actually of value, okay? Or it makes it easier. It saves me 10 minutes when I use this product versus 2 hours. And that becomes important because we're actually information rich and time poor. So you could position your ideas, and then when they have more value, it's going to look a lot more appealing to the people that you want to attract, okay? Business models. A lot of times I look at business models, and I go, wow, this product doesn't just solve this problem in this industry. It solves this industry problem, this industry problem, this industry problem. That one idea now has 5 new revenue streams, okay? Or it could be like, I want to sell this idea to a licensing situation for this industry, and then for these other industries, I want to own it. Does that make sense? Okay, so a lot of times your business model can look from the bigger picture, become more valuable. Capital, we talked about proper allocation of funds. And then team, a balanced team of experts. You know, you need a balanced team of experts. Okay, so customer strategy is identifying your buyer. There's actually 5 generations. Baby boomers do not respond the same as X and Y. And next generation does not respond the same as a baby boomer or a Y generation. A lot of you might have a product, but you don't understand the psychology. Like, like for example, I'm a baby boomer, so my tradition is actually to read information, and then the X generation is more visual. Okay, they adapt it more quickly to, let's say, the computer, the web. Okay, and if your product is more geared towards the web, a lot of times I see it where people are using more printed material rather than using the right media to communicate to their target audience. Does that make sense? Okay. So identifying the lifestyle, okay? Think of your product where how does this change someone's lifestyle? How does it make it different? How does it improve like their home? How does it sit, let's say it's a blender. How does this blender sit on someone's counter? What does it do for the counter? Does it actually add value or take away? Is it beautiful or is it something hideous? Okay? So quality definitely plays a huge role. You should always aim for quality. It creates a longer term for customer loyalty. And then positioning, which I'm going to talk more about, is the clarity of your unique value proposition. We actually came up with a unique value proposition. In school right now, they're talking about your unique selling proposition. In my opinion, what will gain more profitability is value, okay? And a unique buying proposition is coming from the consumer's perspective. What's in it for them to purchase your idea, purchase your product? Now, the payoff by looking at these 3 different strategies is you'll shave off decades of mistakes and redos, your license an idea that is worth more to a buyer, greater profits in shorter period of time, gain more market share. In other words, you might be searching for a local market share, but maybe your idea can actually reach globally with just not that much more tweaking, okay? Speed to stand out as an industry leader. Now, what's most critical, one of the most critical things is speed to market, okay? Speed to market is so critical because we're living in a digital world. So brand awareness budget is, they don't even have this on the web. I looked everywhere and there's nothing around a budget for branding. The only thing I could find is in the area of marketing and advertising, where they say existing companies should market, if it's under 1 million, 8 to 10%, and then 2 to 3 times more of that if it's a new product. And so for bigger companies, it's 4 to 5%. And here again, so if you have a brand new product, you should be looking more like at 40 to 60% for marketing, to get it known. People go, I want to be a household name. Well, how do you plan doing that? It's not going to happen through social media. I can tell you that. Okay? It's going to happen through the use of multimedia. The use of multimedia really means using print, radio, TV, the web, social media. It's looking at who your target audience is and what's going to be the format that they're going to be listening or hearing you. Okay? So implementation, execution, also known as execution. So strategy is looking, in a sense, in creating your roadmap. It's looking at creating your GPS. Here you are, this is where you want to go, and then here's the gap. How do you plan getting there? And then what is your sequence of events? That's ultimately what strategy is about. Does that make sense? Where if you have a product and you want to get to a licensor situation, or you want to get it to the shelf, or you have a business and you want to grow it, it all starts with, where am I? What's going to be my GPS to get me from here to there? And what's the gap? And how am I going to cross that gap? So implementation. So once that's done, okay, now it becomes implementation. Implementation here again is really then, once this has been strategized, then you move into, well, what media should we pick? What do we choose? What makes the most sense? A lot of companies might need 1 or 2, okay, touch points. Some companies may need 3 or 4. Company right now that we're working in the Bahamas needs pretty much all of them, okay? I'm going to start off with one of the most critical touch points and the most valuable piece of property you could ever own. That's most people, 99% of people actually think of it like something they need to just get done. They don't even think of it as anything of value. And most of them are that way. So I'm going to talk about the difference between a logo, okay, and a brand mark, or what's also called a brand icon. So a logo is lower cost, okay, and less time to create. Usually you'll get your brother-in-law to do it, or you hire someone to do something where it represents your business more or less, okay? Now, a brand mark, there's certain earmarks that actually make it very powerful and make it far more valuable than the business itself over time. Sort of like Coca-Cola, okay? So what makes up a brand icon is the mark. Let's say the Nike swoosh, that's the mark, okay? The name of the company, the tagline, the color, and the font that you're using, okay? Most companies, what you want to do is you want to own, for example, your color in your space. Kodak owns yellow, Fuji owns green. Red is associated when it comes to cola. It comes to Coke. Pepsi owns blue, and Mountain Dew owns green. Okay, so what you want to look at is in the space of how you would fit, this is called positioning, what color can you own versus your competition? And it might be a combination of two, but usually you want to own a primary color, and I'm going to get into this. So a strong brand mark should also identify the source. So let's say that if someone sees a Nike swoosh or Under Armour, that's going to move that product off the shelf because the association, that stands for quality, that stands for engineering, that stands for science, that stands for like pride as well. If Nike didn't have that swoosh on their clothing, the company won't be worth much of anything. If Coca-Cola, and you're in a foreign country, not sure what cola to drink, and Coca-Cola did not have their mark on it, or the shape of the bottle, or the ribbon shape, or the red, not only is it hard to identify the actual soda, it actually makes it very difficult for someone to make the right choice of what they're accustomed to. Does that make sense? You get the power behind that? Or Apple, for example. Let's say if, let's say that you own Apple and you go, hey, Howard, you could have all the distribution, you could have, all our partnerships, you could have all the manufacturing, but we're not going to give you the actual mark, the Apple mark. What's the company worth, right? So most companies, 99% of companies don't understand that value, and they have what's called a logo that actually is working against them. It's actually hindering their growth. It actually makes them look amateurish. It's too confusing, so it doesn't work across all medias, like as an app to embroidery. It should be simple, bold, and unique. Most of them are not that way, okay? Worn as a badge. What I mean, like worn as a badge, just say like a Harley Davidson, they are so prideful of their motorcycle, they wear that as a badge, right? They wouldn't be wearing a Honda on a Harley Davidson, right? So it's really important that you understand that, and that's the importance behind understanding the difference between just a product and building it into a brand, and especially a recognizable brand. Just to give you an example, the big companies have made this mistake and spent billions of dollars. So, Apple started off in 76, okay? And then they went from 76 to 98, and this is their current mark. This is called a mark. This is called a pictorial marks. There's actually 5 classifications: pictorial marks, word marks, letterform marks, abstract marks. This is called a pictorial mark. And let's say we look at Microsoft. This is a word mark, okay? Well, actually, I would say that there's a word mark, and then they got smart, and then used an abstract mark. And I'll tell you the reason why. Okay, so they started off here in 75, and then they moved down here just recently, 2012. This is the new mark. So the reason why they chose to use an abstract mark, think about this. Microsoft, even though we understand it in English, how does it translate in all the different languages? Wouldn't it be easier just to show this over time? This becomes universal. Is that powerful or what? I can't even imagine the billions of dollars they had to spend to redo all their signage, all their packaging, by having this correct mark now, okay? So there is a formula, and even the big companies make this mistake by not understanding the formula, okay? Here's Starbucks, okay? They got rid of the word mark around the edges, the letter forms, also known as letter forms, just to a straight mark to make it more universal, to work across the globe as a symbol mark. Why? Because words have to be decoded into an image. What happens if you show the image first as an image? It cuts through all the language barriers. Does that make sense? It's really important that you get that. That's one of the crucial things when it comes to positioning. Okay, so this was really current as well. This is actually 2011. So what happened if you started off with a mark from the beginning so you didn't have to go through all this issue? Okay, just think that he had to re-educate the consumer each time a new mark came out, a new logo from a logo to a mark. They not only had to re-educate the consumer needed to have a way to store that in their mind and understand what's the connection, what's the resource, okay? So I'm now going to show you some case studies. So now we're done with theory. I could go on all these different things, but we don't have that much time, so I have to go through it pretty quickly. So putting it all together, before and after case studies of what companies have gone through and what you could take away and not have to go through these issues, okay? So here again, I'm here for you to look at your business. What can I take away, sit in that seat, and not make these mistakes, or look at the values of what I could take away to make shortcuts with my ideas. So the first is Optic Wash. I just want to show you. I met Optic Wash a couple years ago, sitting here in the audience, and then they signed up with me at the Resource Center, and we ended up talking about their product. And he showed me a little video, and his video was this product here that washes eyewear. Okay, washes sunglasses. You put it in, and it washes it, and then it dries them. Okay, and I'm a visionary, so I could see what was possible with their idea, where it could be, like in malls and airports and this and that. And of course, this is purely from a functional standpoint. How do you get it from a functional standpoint into something that's functional and aesthetics? Because the aesthetics is what's going to have people engage with your idea, right? Okay, so this is all about positioning, which I started to talk about a lot about earlier. Okay, so it's understanding here again, what's the strategy? Here's your idea. Do you want to license it? Do you want to franchise it? What do you want to do with it? Okay, what are the options? Maybe there's more than just one option. So it's by looking at the business strategy, the customer strategy, the brand strategy, like I mentioned before, creating them and looking at alignment between all the pieces. So this is what we came up with. We started off with a vision, looking at the bigger picture, In this case, it says, we change how you clean your glasses forever by eliminating traditional frustrating methods. A frustrating method is using your shirt tail. You will be entertained using our product while having a clear vision of your surrounding environment. So you can see it has a functional, but it presents the lifestyle change. Does that make sense? It's much more than just clean glasses. Took it out of a commodity into a brand. Okay, so they had Shade Saver as the name. And as we went through the strategy, we realized the name itself was too limiting. Shade Saver covered 50% of what it does. It's not just for sunglasses, it's for reading glasses, for everyday glasses. Okay, so we had to open that up. So we came up with all kinds of names. We went through a whole naming process. From that naming process, we landed on Optic Wash. Okay, and then we also created different types of marks that would represent. We actually, this is a handful. We came up with, I think, 1,500 different concepts for them. So we went through a whole study of looking at who's out there, who's doing what, how can this brand grow, what would be the limitations, how do we get around the limitations, how can it work across the globe. And then this is the actual product itself. Okay, we went and worked with the company that developed Redbox, okay, and we worked with their engineers, and then we handled parts of the product designing along with another company called Catalyst. And so you put your glasses in here, it's really cool, lights come up, and then it washes them, and then it dries them, and then we created 11 revenue streams for them, where they only had one. So we're going to do advertising on the screen here, okay, for ads. We're going to do what are called wraps, so you could wrap around the product. Let's say there's a big, giant event taking place along the beach, and it has to be for volleyball, so it creates a great opportunity through that means. And then on the web, we created this whole way that people can get introduced on the web and sell partnerships on that. And then we also created licensing agreement, profit sharing agreements, okay? And that way they could have control over the US and control internationally. So we just think about just doing licensing agreements. We looked at what are the other opportunities that are out there to create even multiple revenue streams. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's really broadening what's called your business model. And then this is just showing we help formulate the design of the app. And this is them at INPEX. They actually won the grand prize. They won a bunch of different categories. So it really worked as far as a strategy from a concept idea that he basically had a sketch of, literally a napkin, and then a video of the prototype, and then bringing it out to the market. Where we're at now, it's incredible. We're actually in car washes, we're in casinos, we're in hotels. We're making deals right now with eyewear, big giant companies. I can't tell you what companies those are. And we're going international this year. This started 2 years ago. That's how fast you can move by doing the right strategies, okay? Now, I could show you different case studies for a lot of different products, but I only have time for one product and one case study for one business that has product, but more than just one product, okay? So Myler Butler & Son, the gentleman is that's taken over is a third generation Bohemian. And this gentleman, Myler B. Butler, was the first Bohemian Governor General. Like that's a big deal. I mean, he literally played a gigantic role in the freedom of the Bohemians and his business started in 1928. He did a lot of things. He created social change. He created change in social economics, and he created a lot in the leadership, and he created a lot of pride in the Bahamas, which there wasn't so much until his great-grandfather created these changes. So it's a really big deal. So they started selling door-to-door, evolved into several entities: retail, liquor store, warehouse, distribution, shopping centers, and private label. Okay, met this gentleman about a year and a half ago. And this is a shot when he invited me over to the Bahamas. I had to take a shot. It's beautiful there. So beautiful there. It's great people, great culture. This is his grandfather on the $20 bill. That's really impressive. And he was telling me, I didn't realize, how much change and shift in leadership they actually created with their family, because they're very humble, very, very soft-spoken, very humble, and they're just all about caring for the people, okay? This just gives you a little bit of architecture. One of the first things I look at when I'm looking at companies is, what's your brand architecture? In other words, how can we actually create a portfolio of products? You have this one product, great for this industry. How can it actually be used for different industry and then repackage it? Or you have, let's say, several different services and products and information, and we want to create a portfolio. This is their vision, which is really cool. This is, we help create visions when we're working with clients because you got to work from the bigger picture, like I mentioned, and it gives you bigger opportunities after that point. So with Milo Butler transforms everyday business into movements that create positive differences in society, enriching the areas of business, education, medicine, government, individual, families, and the general public. You see how this is much more than just a product, okay? This is actually creating changes that actually impact societies and cultures of how we do commerce together or how we educate with one another. This just shows you here from a standpoint of where they started off with. This is the old website here, and this is where they're at right now. Actually, this is transforming, so that's not necessarily true. I'm actually going to go see them again on Sunday. But they're actually making these huge changes right now. This is their competition. I just want to show you the competition here. Excuse me, let me turn this. So this is the competition here. Just want to show you what is your competition, meaning what's your position, how are you going to play in your space. This is the more high-end competition that's taking up more of their market share. This is really important. So this is that was their current logo, okay? And it just didn't create enough of a higher vibe of all the things and changes they've made over the 3 generations. These are different marks that we created for them. We came up with 1,500 different concepts, but each one of them was tied into the positioning from the strategy session of what made them unique and distinct from everybody else, okay? So these are all the different colors, all the different looks and feels, different fonts, just to show you an array. This is the final mark that we came up because we found out they're vertically integrated from wholesale to distribution to retail. And that's something that very few companies can claim. So we want to create this, and we created this and call it the hub. Now the colors that we chose, they have more of an island feel to them and are warm, receptive. The reason why we chose lowercase letters is because the gentleman's very humble. The family, they're a very humble family, but very powerful at the same time. So that's why we chose lowercase rather than all uppercase being really loud in your face. All these things make a big difference. Plus it differentiated them from the competition, okay? This is the before and after. So you could see the difference that created. That actually starts shifting the culture. People in the culture got really excited what was taking place. Their employees, they got really inspired, okay? That was just the beginning. So we're actually working right now. This is a 3D rendering, but we are working on the outside of the building right now, really updating everything. This is the old website. This is a new one it's coming out pretty soon. Whole different experience. We actually didn't have what's called a carousel. We're going to show the lineage of the heritage of the brand, how it all started by showing these old, beautiful black and white shots and then getting up to the current, where they are currently. Because there's so much what's called back-end story to the brand. You could brand from different angles. Here again, about positioning. You could brand from the position. In this case, it's heritage. Okay? This is called a brand style guide. This is how you control the brand and manage your brand. This tells you, like for example, it's all the do's and don'ts, what not to do with the brand mark. Okay? This displays what fonts to use in every situation, whether it's on the web, whether if it's on advertisement or yellow page ads or billboards or videos or commercials. So that way there's a consistency. Even though they're a small company, relatively small, the gentleman wants to be international and very large. So we're putting the best of practices in place so that way the systems are in place and then they could just perform. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's the old packaging. This is a private label, just to show you. Their old private label, it's sitting on the shelf right now. These are just concepts that we came up with them. Okay, we came up with several different packaging concepts. This is called trade dress. See how there's a likeness to them? It's highly identifiable. That's called a trade dress. It's kind of like the dummy books. They're all yellow. You can identify them easily on a shelf or Campbell's soup. Highly identifiable. If you have a product, you need to be thinking about how are you going to expand? What kind of system are you going to use that's identifiable? Licensors love it. Retail stores will want that. Okay? This is another set just to show you the variety. We came up with, I think it's like 70 different concepts for them. I'm just showing you 3. This is the before and after. So this is the one that we're going with. But you could see how much that changed the perception. Okay? We now are very competitive from the value perception versus the big boys because we now look like a professional company. Does that make sense? Okay, so there's 3 ways to design your business and or product for greater value. Have it done for you, hire a consultant, or do it yourself. Okay, those are the 3 options. Okay, so my vision and why I'm here and why I love the entrepreneur spirit, because I consider myself an entrepreneur and an inventor, is really to enrich millions of lives by designing businesses shift their services, products, and information into what I call authentic branding. Brands that matter more to people. If you have a brand that matters more to people, that's just going to influence your economics. That's just the way it goes, you know. So, done for you, this is what we do, is that we support you in your business and brand creation. We also do upgrades. You go, well, our brand's here, but we want to, or our business and brand's here, but we want to be here. A lot of cases we'll do complete makeovers. Okay, here we have a great idea, but it hasn't been crafted into a strong concept. There's a big difference between an idea and a concept, by the way. An idea is like an idea, but it doesn't have that much marketing power. It doesn't have that much power as far as being able to create a lot of profitability. A strong concept is where it's conceptualized through a lot of strategies where now there's this good opportunity for a lot more possibility when it comes to the economics of your idea and the profitability, and also, here again, an inspiration.